Alright, what's going on YouTube? It's Ninja Turtle and Ninja Turtle Customs here, and I got another custom action figure, but this one looks familiar if anyone has been collecting for a while, Marvel Legends. But this is my custom Magik figure, and if you have been familiar with how Hasbro's releases have been going, you know that this exists as well, but you can see that there's a difference. So I'll get back to, well, I'll get to that right now. As to why I decided to make my own custom version of this is because, yeah, I mean, you can already see it. There's a height difference. I don't like her height initially. So before I actually keep going into that, I forgot to mention this in my last video for Rachel Summers. I meant to say that, yeah, I did a Mod Podge to seal all of the paint. So in general, one of the things I had mentioned in the video is that I use semi-gloss black, and that actually initially the first coat of black was flat black, and then I went to semi-gloss black, and I did like the way it looked, but the problem is that it's really glossy with the semi-gloss compared to that of an average figure, and I didn't want her black to look, I didn't want her to stand out more than like an average figure, because most figures is black plastic, but this is black paint, so she's really glossy, and I didn't want that look for her specifically. So after that, I used Mod Podge as a sealer, but in particular I used Mod Podge matte finish, so it dulled down some of the shininess. She's still pretty glossy, but one coat of Mod Podge matte brought it down quite a bit, so she is glossy, but not as glossy as she once was. And while we're already on the subject, I did use Mod Podge matte finish on her Magik's skin, so after that it is matte, but all of the black I did use a satin finish, so it is kind of like semi-gloss, because there's gloss, there's satin, and there's matte finish for Mod Podge. So all of the black has the satin finish, including on these little things in her head, all of the black that I painted, and so on. So getting back into it, I like this Magik, I really do, but this is actually the custom is more based off of the, well, I mean, it's my own version, but it's based off of this. She won't stand right now, come on girl. So yeah, so the custom is a little taller, and one of the reasons why is because I think when Hasbro makes their figures, they kind of go off of some stats, but they also go off of what was already made. Plus, they go off of age more than they do actual height and weight. So when I make my customs, I have a particular set of parameters of what I like to do. So especially for women, because that's another thing I didn't mention in my last video, is that most of my customs are going to be female. I will make male characters, I really will, I promise, but almost the majority of what I have planned are female characters, because one, we all know if you look at a wave, most of the time there's one, maybe two female characters in a wave of 6 or 7 characters, and the females, they're very strong, they're great characters. I particularly love female characters over male characters most of the time, and we just don't get a lot of representation for these female characters and all of their different looks and costumes and so on. So I'm kind of filling in that gap, that void, by making my own of those figures that will never see the light of day for various reasons, as well as making improvements or just adjustments like this one, where I wanted Magik to be taller. So why taller? This one is, again, the official Walgreens version of Magik, and she's on the little teenage body, is what I would call it, the teenage body. It's the weight, the size, the waist, the shorter legs, and so on, where this is more on a adult body using more adult legs, and I'll get into the parts shortly. In general, when I do the height for a character, anything that's 5'4" and lower, I would use these smaller legs, right? Now, I don't want to use these older body molds for the torso at all. Another reason why I had to do a head swap, which we'll get into that later, but the heads on these older body molds have the small peg on the in the neck, which I don't think I like. Well, I don't like at all, but the reason why is because it makes it harder for head swaps. So I could, using this head, swap this onto a different, more adult figure, because there's so many heads to choose from when you're using an adult figure. When using these older ones, that smaller piece inside, there's only like 5 or 6 heads that would fit on this body. And then also the same problem with older figures, they don't have that hinge on the neck joint at all. It's just like a barbell is what they call it. It's just a static barbell. There's no up and down on it at all, where this one has that in particular, just like a modern neck would. So we'll get into all the details right now. So right now we have let's take a look at the legs. First off, you're going to notice that these are a little bit different. So this is in particular is not an exact copy of the original or the what you call it, the Walgreens version. These are completely different legs that I decided to use. I kind of went off of both headcanon and come on, Magic, stand up, girl. Went off of both headcanon and fan art, as well as some comic book references, as I decided to pick which legs. But these legs in particular did come from a Mockingbird figure, and you see she's, you know, not quite the self that she used to be. But not only did the boots, I should say, come from Mockingbird, but also the face. So it is actually Mockingbird's face, but with the San Diego Comic-Con hair of the original, the first release of this Magik figure. But I'll get back into that shortly. So, but yeah, these are the Mockingbird's lower legs, the boots and the knee pads. They're all blacked out. So if you were to want to make one just like mine, and you want to use the exact same legs as these, here's a little bit of a closer look at those. I don't know if it's going to focus for me, but they have a little bit of bumps on there. It's just a little bit longer. It makes her taller compared to these more goth boots. But these are again from Mockingbird, but you can also use the Domino figure. They're the exact same boots on the Domino figure, but the shin guards and the knees are silver on Domino. So you can actually strip that paint if you wanted to, and just, or paint over it, whatever floats your boat, and make it black. Or if you can keep it silver on using the Domino ones, that's all good. But Mockingbirds are already black, no need to change. These legs are from the Black Cat, but then I sculpted here to add some of the thighs and some of the boots, or whatever the like leggings or whatever you want to call it, on there. You can stand, Magic. I believe in you. There you go. Now there's a difference in this choice. Now normally this, like the hip part is where the flesh is, but I decided to make it, instead of like big underwear or whatever you want to call it on this Magik, these are more like shorts, and then she has thighs showing out, so flesh on the thighs, where this is the entire thigh is covered up with the black. So that is just again, more of a looking at concept art, looking at official art, and more headcanon. I decided it looks better like this, and I do like it like this. So just a personal preference. Now, when I went about doing the belt though, so the belts are nearly identical, but the problem is the old waist, the original waist, and like I said, this is somewhat based off of the San Diego Comic-Con. That's actually what my I throw it over there, the hair came from the San Diego Comic-Con version. The hair is actually a little bit darker on the San Diego Comic-Con versus the Walgreens version, but the waist on these older ones is much smaller, and this is using a the Emma Frost body molds. So it's actually this from Emma Frost. It's the same exact waist, and I painted it and made it look, you know, black here. And it's also partially the belt from Emma Frost, because this waist really won't let this same belt go down that far because it's a small belt. So what I ended up having to do, I took the original belt that was on the San Diego Comic-Con Magik, and then added another belt from Emma Frost because they're nearly the same, and just like added just a little piece to make it bigger, because before it was sitting up almost at her abdominal and it wouldn't go any further down. So now it's a bigger belt. I had to glue it to cut it apart and glue it together, and now it sits a little bit lower. And I'm still debating whether or not I want to actually glue the belt onto her waist, because I don't like that it, you know, shifts up and down. But it still sits there. It covers up some of the shoddy painting there, but it's not that bad. But yeah, that works for me. Now the chest area comes from specifically the Blink upper torso. You can use any of the modern torsos, but one of the things that kind of got lost in the translation, if you will, is her cleavage. So you know, this is the original. Her cleavage, you know, is kind of visible, despite me actually making the window bigger. If I had used a different body mold like Lady Deadpool or something like that, I'll just move this out the way. If I used a different body mold like Lady Deadpool, perhaps that would have been a little bit better for cleavage sake, but I really didn't want to change that. I really wanted to like kind of make her chest more subdued. Okay, there we go. Better focus. Yeah, I didn't want her chest to be so prominent in here. I did want some cleavage. I just didn't want it to be like Lady Deadpool or anything like that. Maybe I could have used Emma Frost's upper chest for that sort of thing, but it's still fine. I like the way it looks. It totally works for me. Now we'll go to the Enchanted Arm. The arm is the exact same arm from the San Diego Comic-Con version of Magik. It's not any different, but it is different from the Walgreens version because you see the color difference. Walgreens is a little darker. It's kind of black. San Diego Comic-Con is more silver. I have use for this arm possibly later. I have to look at my references, but I'm not going to drop any hints right now. But obviously I'm going to use it for Magik, right? But yes, same arm. One thing that is important to notice about these arms is that they're shorter than the adult arms. So I do have her on a more of adult body, but these arms are shorter, and in general the teenage arms are shorter than the adult arms in most cases. However, if you're using like Hellcat or Shuri or Medusa, the arms that they put on those body molds are the exact same arms on these teenage molds. They're shorter than something of like, you know, these arms, you know, these arms and so on. They're actually, these are shorter even though they are on adult bodies on those, again, Hellcat, Shuri, Medusa. I had to use this arm because it's the only arm that is available for Magik in general, so that means I also needed to use a short arm, which is again the same arm that came from San Diego Comic-Con version of Magik. However, we have a small update. So this part of her shoulder on the San Diego Comic-Con as well as the Walgreens version, you can see there's quite a bit of a difference. That X is on the Walgreens version, it's below her shoulder. Below her shoulder blade is actually kind of on her bicep, where mine is where it should be on the actual shoulder. And that comes from, guess who, Emma Frost. This I have many of these Emma Frosts, enough to satisfy me, but I took this part of her coat and cut it off, sized it a little bit, and I glued it on both on the sides here and then a little bit on the bottom, not on the top. So she's able to lift her arm up. All right, so she's able to lift her arm up all the way around 360, just a little bit under 90, going straight up, because it does run into her shoulder blade. So there is a problem, but in general, she can't lift this arm up either because of this big spike and how thick it is. It's not that big of a deal to me, but I like the detail having that being the arm that, you know, the way it looks in the comic books and how most art looks. Anyway, it's usually a bigger, puffier part of her arm. And then epoxy sculpt on the elbow for the elbow pad there. Some more sculpt here for the cuff. I decided to sculpt that instead of using, say, the cuffs on Emma Frost like she has there, just because she only needed one and I didn't want to waste one. And the hand is the same from the actually Walgreens version of Magik. That's why she's handless here. Oops. So one of the things about the San Diego Comic-Con version, the weapon holding hand, or yeah, this one, the weapon holding hand, the inside of it is on the San Diego Comic-Con, the actual point that sticks in there, it's like super big. It's not like the hand swapping versions that we have now. It kind of didn't have any intentions for it to actually come out, despite the fact that they gave you two hands. So it was actually kind of hard to get out of the original version. And then it was really hard to get in this version because of the epoxy sculpt here, which actually cracked me trying to push it in there. So there's a crack in this epoxy sculpt on the wrist. But the newer version on the Walgreens is like your modern hands that are easily swappable. So I just threw that in there. Lastly, the head again. This is a Mockingbird head. So it is the exact head coming from here. Remove some of the face paint, and then I painted all of the flesh tone together, so it is normally, you know, not quite as, you know, colorful or pink or whatever on the Mockingbird. So I had to paint her face, remove some of the makeup. The Model Masters, again, the paint that I've been using is Model Masters. In particular, this flesh tone is a mix of the two flesh tones that they have. They have a warm and a cool. I used a little bit more, I believe it's a little bit more warm than it is cool, but it's still a mix of all of it together. It's hard for me to replicate that perfectly, especially again because my flesh tone paint is very, very dry right now. I need to get new kinds and end up having to mix it a lot with water just to loosen it up a bit. But the eyes, I try to keep the eye makeup the same as it was on Mockingbird, so when I painted in the eyes and in there, I didn't remove any of the eye paint or any of the eye color or anything like that. I did have to redo the eyebrows though, and so that is a little bit, actually I have to switch lenses so we can get some good focus here, and we're on manual focus instead of autofocus here. But anyway, the makeup is, you know, all the paint is all Model Masters. The only thing I painted on her makeup was her lips and her eyebrows. Everything else is just the same eye color and eyeliner that is on Mockingbird. And again, the hair came from my San Diego Comic-Con version, as well as these little things coming out of her head. I did repaint those. So the hair still has the same slits as it does on the San Diego Comic-Con version. But the head obviously doesn't have the ports for it, just like the Mockingbird head wasn't made for that. So I didn't do anything special other than I had to make the head anyway a little bit bigger in the back so that the hair would fit properly onto the figure, onto the actual head sculpt. So it's a little bit bigger back here, and then I gave some extra room for these things to be glued on there. They're super glued onto her head, just so they stay on there. And that's about it. So that is this custom. I did it because I wanted her to be taller than the Walgreens / San Diego Comic-Con version of her. I do have the swords that are right here. Alright, so she does have the swords. Again, the whiter sword comes from the San Diego Comic-Con version. The yellow sword comes from the Walgreens version. So I prefer the white one, and I actually do want to make an additional head sculpt at some point to have her eyes whited out like the San Diego Comic-Con version head does. So here again, her eyes are blue. Same thing, it's just a Mockingbird head. So I want to get another Mockingbird head and to have all whited out eyes and do the same type of thing. But that's a low priority. I just wanted to get this custom done. And I do have a limited amount of these. I actually do have another Walgreens version sitting there. I want to use this hair for other characters before I start using it to make alternate head sculpts for this. So another character that has exact hair like this is 02 from Darling in the Franxx, and I really want to make a custom of that soon. But there's, again, I did say I wasn't going to say anything about it, but there's another Ileana costume that I want to make using the exact same hair. The only issue is I'm going to have to figure out how to plug in this little gap here, because it won't have those hair spikes or whatever in there. So once I get to it, hopefully before the end of the year would be great. I want to use that hair for that, and that's about it. But yeah, that wraps it up. One thing I do want to mention is that there are blemishes here, and I did have a issue with it that I'm just going to live with, is that you can't see it, which is great, but just like my last figure with Rachel, I cracked the torso initially because I thought that was just a thing you had to do when you make customs, and I was doing a lot of research, and I didn't want to throw away the torsos that I cracked. But in general, when I had to fix this, which was a thing I had to do for the belt, I put it together and everything was fine. But then when I had to fix the belt to make it bigger, I had to take the upper torso off. And when I did that, I ended up cracking it down on the side, because that's initially where the original seam is, as well as all of the epoxy sculpt that I used to cover it up. So again, when I put it back together, because the front half and the back half, that's what happens when you crack it, the super glue. And first, actually, I tried to repair the holes with epoxy sculpt before gluing it together. Going forward, I'm not even going to be cracking figures, most likely. So this will be one of the last figures that I have. I'm using a cracked torso, but when I tried to put the upper torso back on, ended up cracking it down the side on both sides, and really the upper torso is not actually sticking in there. I can probably pull it off with very minimal effort, but it's fine enough that it will sit on there. But yeah, there's like a big crack going on the side on each side of this. So I may repair this one day, but it's not a priority to me right now. That's again one of the reasons why I use these legs, in particular the legs that come from the Black Cat from the Emma Frost or whatever, is that they pop on and off. So if I really wanted to replace this torso, I can do it by just popping these legs off, popping these arms off, and popping the head off, and I can either keep this upper torso, or because nothing wrong with the upper torso, it's just the lower torso, and then just replace it with one and pop everything back on. It really wouldn't be that much effort. But it's not entirely necessary right now, so I'm not going to. That'll wrap up this video. Again, I used satin finish Mod Podge on the black areas, and then all of the flesh is matte finish Mod Podge. I will be back with more customs. I have several that are works in progress. I have one that is nearly finished, but I'm waiting on the Deadpool pirate costume or pirate figure to come in, because I need one part from that, and then I will be making a video on the character that will be using that cape. So I will not have any more hints on that. If you've been checking out my Discord, you would know. If you've been checking out my Twitch streams on Sunday, you would know. So make sure you guys hit me up on Twitch, twitch.tv/ninja_chortle, and of course a link to my Discord is below. I will see you guys next time.